Good day. In the scope of Yerevan Dialogue 2024, our guest today is Sarah Bressan, Research Fellow at Global Public Policy Institute based in Germany. Ms. Bressan, welcome to Armenia. Thanks for joining us. How do you view the importance of the Yerevan Dialogue 2024 in promoting regional dialogue and cooperation? What specific message do you hope to convey during your participation in this event?
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for welcoming me to Armenia. It's my first time here, and I'm really glad I could come. It's a, I think strategically very interestingly located country. Yesterday at the opening session of the dialogue, I think we saw how Armenia has the power to convene at this conference, the power to convene really different political actors in the region, to put them together and to hear like the different perspectives. And I think obviously in the geopolitical situation, it is very, very important to have these types of dialogues. And I hope being here I can contribute to that.
Germany has a strong track record in development cooperation. How does Germany prioritize its international development efforts, and what role can it play in supporting sustainable development goals globally?
I mean, for Germany, it's always really important to work through international multilateral systems, so through the EU or through the UN, and trying to, not act as like a unitary single country on its own. And I think especially with the region, that means that Germany's policy very much, is linked to EU relations to Armenia and to other countries in the region. Of course, I mean, there's the question, of neighboring countries' political orientation, for example, with Georgia and the political upheavals that are going there at the moment, the very worrying kind of trends in suppressing freedom of speech and NGOs and journalism. And this is something that traditionally Germany, the EU are concerned in, and I think in terms of supporting democracy mainly in the region.
Ms. Bressan, what are your thoughts on the future trajectory of the European Union and its role in global affairs? How can member states and neighboring countries work together to tackle common challenges and seize new opportunities?
I mean, I talked to some of fellow Armenians here, and I was, I found it interesting to hear that they see the EU's power when it comes to the economic sector. So, exchanging with a country like Armenia on economic opportunities, on trade and that dimension. And then also in capacity building in the public sector, kind of modernizing the public sector, making it fit to deal with today's challenges. And these are kind of from that perspective two very relevant elements that I think the EU is happy to work on with. But at the same time, I think it's important to acknowledge the internal democratic challenges of the EU and forging partnerships to sustain democracy within the EU and also in neighboring regions.
And how do you perceive the role of small and medium-sized states in influencing global governance and international relations? What steps can these countries take to amplify their voices on the international stage?
I think the EU is a good example of, the fact that we always say we need to stand together because individually, the countries are just too small to, rule the world. Even for an economy like Germany, which is in the top 5 of the world's largest economies, we recognize that we need to work with partners. So partnerships, are important for small countries. But at the same time, I think it's interesting to see how, for example, small countries in terms of population, like Sweden, right, with the first country of introducing a feminist foreign policy, they can leave a mark on the world stage as well. So, strategically, if a country puts their mind to something and brings that in the international realm, like the UN and so on, they can really make a contribution.
Ms. Bressan, as a member of the European Union, how does Germany advocate for a stronger EU presence or involvement in the South Caucasus, and how Germany in particular can contribute to strengthening regional security architecture in the South Caucasus?
I mean, Germany is present, obviously, with its embassies in the region, who, you know, ensure, and first of all, understanding what are the challenges in the region particularly, and how to balance important interests, you know, like energy interests with neighboring states of Armenia are really important in terms of, you know, ensuring energy security in the EU. But at the same time, as I mentioned, kind of a geopolitical interest of Germany is stable democracies. And so that's some of the work that Germany is doing, by the way, not just through the government, but also, for example, through the foundations, the German political foundations that are present in the region, and who, you know, in moments like these also do the job of explaining in Germany what is happening in Georgia and Armenia and in neighboring countries.
And given the region's history and ongoing conflicts, how important is the role of public diplomacy and soft power for Armenia in enhancing its global image and fostering regional cooperation?
I mean, Germany is a country that in the past decades has not mainly worked with hard power on the global stage, right, after the Second World War. So it is kind of the diplomatic element, it is kind of the other parts of foreign policy, but that are not less important. I think there's, you know, we are seeing a change in the international landscape in terms of who are trusted mediators and who can be trusted mediators in the system in different conflicts. And we heard at this conference about the peace initiatives that the Armenian government is putting forward. You know, that's just one example of initiatives where countries can rally around and can support that. In order to just make sure to find a kind of stable democratic solutions.
And Ms. Bressan, the COP29 conference will soon take place in Azerbaijan. How do you assess that the UN conference will take place in a situation in a country where Armenian prisoners of war continue to be held in Azerbaijan and investigations against the country's political society and journalists have gained new momentum?
I think that's something that is not just applicable to the COP in this particular situation. We've seen big conferences taking place in non-democratic countries. We've seen Football World Cup taking place, you know, in Qatar with problematic conditions for workers who died on the site. And I think it's a responsibility of the international community to make sure, you know, for example, with international events that we saw happening in Paris, like the Olympics, to connect that to an agenda that supports human rights and democracy, and to really show that it goes hand in hand and that we're not kind of having a party or even having a diplomatic summit at the expense of kind of the most vulnerable in society. It's difficult because, I mean, money plays a big part in it, right? And we need donors to kind of fund the big conferences and so on. But it's people who have the opportunity to speak out against it. You know, I think it's really important to uncover the human rights violations that are happening.
Thanks for the interview, Ms. Bressan. Today I've hosted Sarah Bressan, Research Fellow at Global Public Policy Institute based in Germany. Thanks for watching us.